Welcome, guys, to the Underdogs Podcast, the most scuffed but the only English podcast about the Taiwanese side of the PCS. Today, we will start from giving a brief summary for the teams towards the end of the regular season. Let's jump right into it. First, we have Dewish Team, who has finally, unfortunately, they got a win. They won versus CFO in the last week. They won, and the 018 dream is gone. Apart from that, Dewish Team, when I looked up at their stats, they are surprisingly not as dominantly bad. They have the most deaths in the league by a huge margin, but overall they have mostly second worst team stats in the league. We are not going to get over them further. I don't like Xiao too. I'm kind of okay with WSL, who almost always kind of gets it in the end of the split, which is kind of suspect. My team MVP is always going to be Pepero in this case. I like this man, though this time he did not perform as well. His spring was definitely better than his summer, and Enoa actually kind of stepped it up, so he almost could have been in talks for the MVPs. I mean, the bot lane definitely was the most consistent part of the Dewish Team throughout the split, and this is basically it when it comes to me having any expectations towards this team. Just please make a competitive roster, just kick out or go away, please. Ninth, we have Impunity, and Impunity, they managed to get those 2 wins versus Dewish Team. They have most of the worst stats in the league. They are absolutely the worst when it comes to gold, CS, early stats, objectives, etc., but they managed to clutch it out against the worst team in the PCS. They are actually, in my opinion, a better team fighting team. They still have LJW, who is pretty much the worst top laner though, and he was a huge liability. And well, playing from Southeast Asia, not playing from Taiwan, is always taxing for those kinds of teams. I think that this was certainly a little bit of a problem when it comes to those farm numbers, but you can't deny that some players definitely did not step up. That said, in my opinion, this roster came out pretty okay-ish. This was a last-minute roster. This was a full Southeast Asian roster. We didn't expect much from them. They got those 2 wins over Dewish Team, and if you are not going to be a laughingstock of the league, this is the minimum, and that minimum was on. My team MVP for this team is Shera. You can definitely consider Blaze in that area. Funnily enough, when I was actually looking over the stats, the support with the most damage percentage was actually Smurf, who was the guest on our previous episode. If you want to get more insider stuff about Impunity and what was going on between the splits and in the beginning of the split, make sure to check out the beginning of episode 2 for that. We are going to move over to the next team, which is going to be Helpix. And Helpix with Goton's rookie split with the new mid laner in Adiox. Adiox definitely being the upgrade over Hongtu. Not a huge one, but it was sufficient for him to actually not be a liability for his team for the most part. He played, I think, the most unique champions in his role actually, and I mean, he pulled off the Olaf myth against Maple's Chase, which was Maple's most played champion. I will actually go over that when we go over the All Pros and PSG Talon. But yeah, the stars of this team, definitely Taco and Tide. Taco when it comes to actually like marking consistency, you definitely think about him actually as the most improved player. I will tell you right now, this is not my most improved player, who is maybe surprising or not to some people. Some people already also know that from talking in the private, but overall, like, kudos. They managed to not repeat the 6-12. This is the second best split in Hellpix and MFT history. As we know, Hellpix directly inherited MFT. They retained in the beginning most of their squad, and Gotham basically, I think he achieved what he wanted, because him actually playing in the league has spiked the viewership massively on his game. So overall, I am definitely surprised by the level of this team. I am content with the level of this team. This was a team without any superstar. When the other 6 teams above, apart from West Point, actually do have those superstars, they are 8th because they did lose 2 games versus West Point. So we can say the tiebreakers in PCS don't work like that, but for the sake of it, we can say that Hellpix went 8th here. But yeah, they were actually a competitive team. They were entertaining to watch. They were, like, for someone that didn't understand the memes, like, Hellpix really did catch my eye, made me a fan of them, sort of. Not over many more teams that I do fan over, which is mainly Frank at this point, but they are certainly in the group of the organization that I do want to see in the future, and I look forward to Gothon's future splits when he kind of gets used to actually playing pro, to actually grinding in solo queue, and let's see if he actually makes some pretty interesting narratives happen. Going over to the next team, this is going to be West Point Esports, who took over the full control of the slot this year from Sem9 WPE. Sem9 is gone. West Point Esports played this split. They got rid of most of their Filipino members, got new Taiwanese members in 665, in Cha, in Nuli, in Prage, and they are 7th. I think this is a good this is a good record in my opinion. They managed to win twice against all of the teams below them. They managed to get that one upset versus CFO. Hellpix did get more upsets. West Point Esports definitely was not that... They weren't more competitive than Hellpix when it goes to fighting towards upper echelon of teams. But we also have to take into consideration that for the 2/3 of the split, the majority of plays were set up around 665. It was 665's game, and when Relia actually came up for week 5, week 6, the whole situation in the team massively changed, and suddenly Relia and Noli were the carries, and that was a pretty radical change that I did not anticipate, and they actually managed to make it look good. They got the upset versus CFO, which was actually impressive for that time. Later on it kind of faded away, and they cemented the statement that they are not a bad team. They are just simply not a bad team, and for a Southeast organization to actually assemble this kind of a roster and to make that record, this is unprecedented. Kudos to West Point Esports for actually managing to be competitive. This is the best record since Nova, which was a Thai organization. This is a best record of a Filipino organization in the PCS without a fully Southeast Asian roster, mostly Taiwanese people, but Relia definitely caught our attention in those last 2 weeks. Just really kudos for West Point for managing to turn over this really bad situation in which Sam9 really was. Like, I think that they definitely made it work, and with some improvements in the AD carry role, unfortunately, I think they can go high, because in my opinion, Prage, he wasn't it, unfortunately. In my opinion, unironically, he was the worst ADC in the league. I'm sorry to Prage, but I think that Prage was actually a huge liability for West Point Esports. Like, not a huge, but he was a noticeable liability, and I think that if they improve there, then they can actually look for something. Anyway, we are going to go over the 6th place team. Frank Esports, after losing the tiebreaker to CFO, they had a very bad first half of the split. They went 2-7, I think, something like that, and then they just simply bounced back. In week 4, they made a 3-0 sweep, which was pretty surprising. They managed to get the upset over J-Team in week 6. Week 6 or 5, I actually... Maybe it was week 5? I think it was actually week 5, okay. Because, yeah, it was win versus J-Team and then loss versus BYG in week 5. So, I mean... They went 9-9. This is a downgrade compared to the last split, unfortunately. And I kind of think that this has to do with the fact that Frank really didn't know what their identity was, and I don't think they still do, because playing for M&M didn't really work. They started to get some massive just problems that couldn't really be explained with like normal means. They were just, like, in my opinion, and the same thing actually plagues CFO in my opinion, their comms are just, their comms just deteriorated, and not enough information is actually passing through the team. People are actually getting caught in a side lane again. Like, this was a big problem of Pretender previously, and this actually was happening again. And overall, I just think that Frank are going through a transformation, trying to get on the next level, and actually because of that they dropped a level, which is very unfortunate, because those players are definitely talented. But when you see like Kaiwing engage 4v5, is just like, just go watch the tiebreaker in terms of that. And going over what changed in fear on paper, Kenny-chan went in. In the beginning, he had no synergy with the players. Then they swapped with Holo. Then he came in again, and he actually looked better. But then week 6, they started actually to play around him and Soulkill, which surprised me. Like, first, you are playing around Soulkill, and then like I was like, okay, let's see what Kenny-chan can do, and they just didn't manage to execute basic Nidalee Renekton macro. Like, maybe like if you see Nidalee oftenly picked with Renekton, like you see the level 3 dive almost every time, and here like this Renekton wasn't getting the waves somewhat stacked. He was just getting like this 20 CS advantages. There were no ganks until the laning phase stopped, and Nidalee just kind of went useless without doing much. So I really hope that Frank manages to pick up, get on their past level, because so far it is not looking good for them. Like Kenny-chan is not a game changer compared to Holo. Pretender is actually looking worse because he's forced to play the utility, the engagers champions, which is absolutely not the best at. Like he's absolutely DPS player, who kind of needs a little bit of resources to actually get comfortable. And Solo Kill was actually doing fine with low resources, in my opinion. Like, in my opinion, it was just a dip in Eminem's form that really kind of carried on negatively. And, well, it's just kind of made the House of Cards fall. Unfortunate. As a Frank fan, I'm not a fan of what is going on right now. Team MVP, I guess Skywing. I really don't want to give out MVP to any of these players because I think that all of them, aside from Kenny-chan, who is new, downgraded. And Solo Kill kind of went back in the latter half of the split. He did hard carry the game versus CFO. But then we saw how CFO actually mental boomed. Like, CFO, their 7-loss streak was a terrible chain of events. They just absolutely lost their mind when it comes to like reading game states and like actually reading the team fights and what they should do in the team fights. Like their cohesion just vanished. It didn't work. Split calls, just bad team fighting, but the mechanics were fine. The mechanics are still mostly fine. Like, you see that Rest actually isn't dominating the lane right now, which is kind of not really good, especially in the Renekton meta. But like, Rest wasn't like really picking that much Renekton as far as I remember. Rest wasn't even picking, like, there was no cheeky off meta pick from Rest. Jimin was mostly playing what he wanted, and he is definitely not a hyper carry, unfortunately. And I think that Tristana is mostly not a hyper carry unless super late into the game. But sometimes you can play her as a hyper carry. But she's definitely a great second threat. Anyway, Gemini, it's really tough to say. I don't think Gemini is really the problem here. I don't think the bot lane was the problem as well. Maybe Gemini maybe misplaying kind of the engages, maybe misplaying the team fights as well. But in early game, I think Gemini was mostly fine. Mostly. And I cannot really blame Shun. I kind of tried to blame Shun, but I just realized that it was kind of results based, if whatever, and his stats are actually fine. And, I mean, Xiaoxi was actually, in my opinion, the most consistent member here. Maybe it's just me, like, not ranking supports well as well. Maybe it's me not looking at him in the team fights, but I didn't really think he downgraded as much. And I think that he still presented himself as, oh, sorry for that, as a really good sport with his re-entry into the PCS. And I mean, I really hope they just get the good meta reads, the good game state reads. They just get the morale boosts from beating the Osh teams. I'm just surprised. That's just all I will say, because the mechanics are definitely still there, but they need to just collect themselves. And when this team will connect themselves, absolutely no surprise if they go top 3. But they will first have to go over Deep Cross Gaming, who managed to win twice against Frank Esports, which pretty much secures them the 4th slot. And here you have it on the screen. In my opinion, like, you can just simply summarize TCG with a few sentences. Like, they have very good early game, they have very good laning. Hana is a good early game jungler. He actually participates really well in terms of damage, but they always just they throw at the mid-late game, they throw at the objectives, they throw in a random team fight, they don't really get picked off, but they sometimes do. They just you really cannot trust them in with the lead in the early game, because I always have this feeling in the back of my head that they are going to throw, and they most oftenly throw, unfortunately. And Hanabi, like, despite being a monster in lane, is not doing it. Like, he is a Renekton Gnar 2 trick at this point, and there is no saving him until Gnar gets buffed. Mission had a surprisingly bad split considering how he was playing at Impunity, but I mean, yeah, there is no excuse, in my opinion, when it comes to Mission's performance in particular. I think he was the hyper carry. He was supposed to be the hyper carry, he just did not perform. Hana, in my opinion, wasn't in the top 5 of the junglers for multiple splits at this point. He is okay, but in my opinion, if you are better than him, then you are actually a good jungler. He is that benchmark of the good junglers. That's it. Kriskata, in my opinion, didn't downgrade at all. He was incredibly consistent, but he is just not the main carry of this team. Like, he's not designed to be the hyper carry of this team, and playing this low economy, low CS numbers playstyle just meant that he did not manage to actually, like, go to the moon. But he still had the biggest damage share across all the AD carries. So there goes my MVP to him. Or Kaya existed. Beyond Gaming. This is their best regular split since 2021 summer, and if we knew something about 2021 PCS, it was that PSG and Beyond Gaming were going towards. If we knew that from 2022, we know that Beyond Gaming, when it comes to summer playoffs, they can get it along, they can qualify as the second seed and still lose in the finals because PSG are the GOAT, or CFO, because they just looked better at 2022 and PSG was going through a turmoil with the Korean jungle mid lane. That didn't really work. This is so sad, but they are looking better right now. And when it comes to Beyond Gaming, my team MVP is Betty. He didn't look as good off the AP Kai'Sa as he did on other champions, but he's still the best AD carry in the league, and with the waning influence of the AD carries, maybe Carries is the one to go off. That pun was definitely intended, sorry for that. Yeah, Carries was actually, like, Carries is a very good support, but when it comes to carries, and I'm actually going to say that towards Kaiwing. I didn't mention that when going over Frank Esports. Carries and Kaiwing, I mean, actually, I kind of went over it. They just sometimes just very bad timings to engage. Simple as, they just sometimes int engage and lose the team fights just from that, just because they go in as all, which is a good thing for a team, and they just lose. Apart from that, this is still the same top side from Beyond Gaming. This is still Likai, who is bad without the resources. He has been one-tricking Jax for the better part of the latter half of the split, and even the first half somewhat. 11-16 actually kind of stabilized. He had an inconsistent first half of the split, as he did in spring as well, and as he kind of made us get used to. but now he kind of stabilized in the middle ground between him actually being the hyper carry and him actually being a dirty inter. So I think this is good for Beyond Gaming overall, but this kind of means that they will not get the X factor in playoffs. Like 11-16 actually has to pop off in playoffs for Beyond Gaming to actually go to Worlds, in my opinion. And we will see whether the X Factor pops off again on his Rise. The Rise is not getting buffs, this is only a reference. Kongyue is the best jungler in my opinion right now. He is absolutely monster on the Viego, he is good on carry junglers, he is not good on tanks. Things are getting nerfed on 13.15. We will see if the playoffs go on that patch, but overall, Kongyue, despite the meta, is actually just looking like the best jungler in the PCS so far, which is kind of disappointing, but we will go over that soon. J-Team. J-Team are looking hot. I am a big fan of both Menji and Driver. I am a big anti-fan of Bruce, but I gotta say that Bruce and also Lava did improve this split, and overall, yeah, I mean, Lava had a big glow up. Bruce, he made himself a little bit more consistent, but that is also with Driver and Minji absolutely popping off in some of those fights, and sometimes just giving the Bruce the space to really get the DPS. Enzo had a really good split as well, in my opinion, but he was not as flashy, I think. And I mean, he didn't get those advantages in lane still, like with Bruce. It kind of is hard. But they were the only team to pick Lucian Millia, and they have measures to go over it, to go around it. Millia bans are not going to facilitate that further though, but overall, Lauva almost would get a most improved player this split in my opinion, but I wouldn't get into the recency bias without a reason. But yeah, they lost versus Frank, BYG, PSG. The loss versus Frank Esports was a complete just draft throw, drafting all AP composition in carries. I don't remember if they even had AD in the jungler or support, with all honesty. Yeah, I mean, this just didn't look good. They just lost because of the draft and because Frank Esports, I mean, they weren't playing around solo kill back then, so yeah, that was it. That was it. I mean, we really hope that Bruce doesn't become a liability again, and if he does, we hope that Abdelen comes back matchy style. PSG Talon. They lost only versus J-Team recently. They lost versus BYG in the first half of the split when 11-16 was having a really good week too, I think. And they have the players, but I think that they are playing way too reserved for the current circumstances. And J-Team actually punished that really well week 6, so we will see whether they will actually adapt to this and try to be a little bit more aggressive. Give Junjia some more Viego games, give him some sneaky turbo carry angles. Lilia is definitely an option. They can, in theory, sub in Husha to play the buffed Diana and the Lilia, because those AP junglers are definitely the best. Like, Husha is definitely the AP jungler player, and I would like to see him actually try and then execute that, and the meta kind of allows it. Jace is still unbanned, and Jace is the champion with whom Maple played half the games with. He had 9 games of Jace this split, and I'm not I'm not surprised. This champion is completely OP. And overall, nothing really surprising coming down from PSG Talon. Ajia did look good in comparison to the rest of the players. But I don't think it was also mostly from Aji's initiative. He had some good games. He had some very good games in the first half of the split. He kind of faded away in the second half of the split as they pushed more resources towards Maple, and that's why Maple is the MVP right now. Wacko turns into his more consistent self once again. He is not the absolute 1v9 I'ma jump in and flip the teamfight AD carry. He is the Mr. Consistent right now, and alongside Woody it is looking okay. Woody actually not the player who... He actually knows how to engage those teamfights, and overall PSG Talon are still the team with the best macro in my opinion. And this can be advantageous in also preparation towards this best of 5. So we'll see how PSG Talon actually manages to match up against J-Team, and maybe the play of BYG, and maybe the comeback of the CFO. This is definitely an angle, because if some teams really manage to get it together, then PSG Talon is in really big danger. But that still is an if. And with Maple playing so good, they are still the favorites to at least get the second spot, if not the first. This is definitely a contest between J-Team and PSG Talon. We will see how they match up as we will go into the All-Pro teams. Oh, actually, yeah, I forgot about the patches. Welcome to the most scuffed podcast about PCS. Patch 13.14, which is going to feature mostly enormous buffs for the Aatrox, which is going, if the playoff patch is 13.14, then we are actually going to see big priority for Aatrox. This is going to be a pick that changes the meta. This is going to be a nerf for Agi in my opinion. This is going to be okay for Soul Kill. This is going to be okay for Rest, but it is going to be definitely good for Hanabi. This is going to be I counted out 4. This is going to be actually bad for Lee Kai. And which top laner did I miss? Actually, wait. I think it is going to be okay for Driver, but this is definitely going to be massive for Hanabi in my opinion. And overall, more power to the top laners if they actually manage to get their hands on this pick. We'll see if Driver manages to neutralize the matchup with his trademark Gragas. Lissandra, huge buffs as well, some nice utility stuff, some nice damage stuff that are definitely going to improve her across the map. Menji was actually known to play Lissandra terribly in the beginning, but kind of got used to the champion. I definitely do not want to see Assassin Lissandra from him, because he kind of doesn't know the limits of the champion. I think this is going to be good for Maple if PSG actually decides to go for Facilitator. This is going to be okay for Mission, who pretty much just wants to play whatever. But Lissandra is a very good neutralizer for the laning phase, so if it goes versus him, then it's not going to be really nice. For Pretender, I think that this is going to be a pick that he may land on many times if they continue playing around the top side. Unfortunately, if they continue giving Pretender the facilitators, then this is definitely a pick that he's going to land on. And I think that it is going to be kind of alright, since Lissandra definitely has the potential to just make the massive 5-man engage. But most people do use her mostly for utility, which is kind of sad. When it comes to other mid laners, such as I counted in Mission. Oh my god, I'm so bad at this. But yeah, when it comes to 11-16, I think 11-16 is going to kind of like Lissandra, and Jimin definitely not. This is going to be this is going to be bad for Jimin, who is also that kind of a player that wants to kind of dominate in the lane. And I also see that I actually cover some of that stuff in the corner, so I'm going to temporarily banish myself a little bit. And as you see, we also have buffs on Volibear. They are slight, but I think that people such as Gemini, Lava, or Hana may pick it up, especially Ana. Maybe Gemini. Not likely for Lava. But Gemini and Hana are kind of known to pick up this champion. And I got the 10% on critical hits. I'm not sure who is going to actually benefit from that. Maybe some cheeky Samira from Shin. But I don't know if he's still going to build Duskblade and Caitlyn. But we'll go over Caitlyn in 13.15. Nerfed Kindred. This is going to influence every single jungler who wants to play carries, because yeah, most of these junglers just do play Kindred. I don't know if Kenchan actually does play Kindred, but for Junjia, Gemini, and Congregate, this is going to be huge. Milio. Nerf for Enso, nerf for Woody, because in my opinion, Woody likes to play. He loves the mages, he likes the enchanters, and he hates the tanks. That is my opinion. Rel is going to be a nerf for every tank support. Static Shift is going to get the nerf for wave clear. I do wonder how it influences the wave clear, whether the DMAT is actually enough to still clear casters, and whether this actually makes it enough for other people to actually stop building the item. Going on to the patch 13.15, which maybe we'll see, maybe we will not. Caitlyn is getting buffed, slightly buffed, but it's going to be noticeable, and with the IE changes we may see the Caitlyn again from M&M, who is known to play the champion. Camille buffs, which are going to be massive for Likai. Like this is one of the champions that he absolutely loves, and he will definitely see that from him if the playoffs patch is going to be 13.15. And maybe Soulkill will try and play the champion, go in the tracks of YSKM, and actually try and carry some games and probably fail again. Gwen is going to get buffed. Gwen was a late into the draft. It was a counter pick that was picked into those more beefy matchups, and with the magic resist, with the resistances buffs on her W, it means that she will have better trades in the top lane. This will mean that she will have some better, her matchups will be better in the top lane, but I kind of doubt that she will be picking ban. She is definitely a good matchup in the Aatrox though, so I think we may see an uptick in priority towards the Gwen, which may kind of collide with some of other picks that we've seen in the meta, such as Lilia. And Talia getting buffed, which I think PCS does play many Talia games. It is definitely the champion that region does like really much. Mission especially. Nesty when he was playing, unfortunately he is out of DCG. He's officially out of DCG. If people didn't know about that, he actually is out of the team. He is not going to play any matches. And I think Minji can actually pick this champion. I think 11-16 can also pick this champion calmly. I think pretty much everyone apart from Jimin likes the champion. I think the meta actually strays back from Jimin so much. He's the mid lane AD carry player in the PCS, and the more meta strays away from the Tristana, the worse for him. And 13-15, Aatrox is going to be nerfed. He is going to be still buffed compared to 13.15. This will mean that he will not be OP, but he will definitely see him played nonetheless if the patch is going to be 13.15. The patch also includes nerfs to AP Ivern and AP Kai'Sa. AP Ivern in the jungle not really seen that oftenly. It was played by Lava and Hana. I did include Gemini also because, like, maybe this is me just remembering wrong, but I kind of remember him as the guy that would actually pocket pick Ivern at times, but we didn't see really that in a long time, and in this split especially so. Yeah. Maybe we will not see Ivern from Gemini at all. AP Kaisa nerfs on her Q. This is not going to impact her. Static got nerfed. This is still not going to impact her in my opinion. People will still pick AP Kaisa. Maokai's jungler killer also got nerfed, which means he's not as OP. He's still good. Sejuani is also getting actually sorta good nerfs for her W damage, which means that she will have worse skirmishing power, which maybe means that people like Junjia or Gemini will actually stop playing the champion. I don't think actually Gemini played that much Sejuani, but maybe Junjia starts picking her less. And yeah, maybe she will see a little bit less of a priority. I still think that Hana will definitely play her. This is like without anything to contest. Hana will still pick the champion, and Lava maybe. I don't think Kenny Chen is going to pick the champion, but maybe he does if they actually flip the playstyle again. And I don't think that... sorry for that. I don't think Kongyue will pick Sejuani at all. Unless they are actually going to just like go for 11-16 Silas carries or something like, and his Silas is not even good. So we will transition in the first all-pro team. Is going to be J-Team Driver, Beyond Gaming Kongyue, J-Team Menji, BYG Betty, CFO Xiaoxi. And when it comes to top lane, there's nothing really to contest. Driver is the actual stomper when it comes to top lane. Rest downgrading, Hanabi downgrading, Likai not getting the resources, Solo Kill downgrading. There were so many downgrades in the top lane. Takua actually rising up and Relia as well, but Driver actually just cemented himself as the best top laner in the league, undisputed. Kongyue is going to be the jungler, and he is the most consistent in terms of the statistics. Many members have like huge CS numbers, but they have low initial numbers. Like Junji actually had some pretty nice stats, but just for the eye test, he doesn't perform at all, in my opinion. So congratulations to Kongyue. In my opinion, Kongyue definitely influences the games more. And his early games and his Viego are just that much influential. Benji, absolute monster on the Azir, and we didn't even knew him from his Azir. He was mostly known as an assassin player, but the rounding of this champion pool that is actually going on with Benji, with the Orianas, with the Azirs, with kind of the Jace, but they kind of like to leave the Jace banned or open. I think that Menji definitely is going to be extremely dangerous as a mid laner, and him with Maple are undisputed top 2, and no one is really close to them at all. Like, at all, no one is close. Betty, I don't think there is really much to talk about. Like, Betty and Wako can be comparable in the latter half of the season, but in the first split, Betty was undisputed first, and on basis of that, he's going to be the first on my all-pro team. He has excellent statistics. He has lower DPM than Eminem, but only slightly. Which is kind of surprising that Eminem actually still has the most DPM, but not the biggest damage percentage as well. And his statistics, like in terms of KDA, in terms of CS per minute, in terms of most of the stuff that you require from the AD carry, the laning stats, kind of not as good. but he's certainly a man to be respected. And Xiaoxi, this is maybe going to be controversial, but he's smashing the lanes with Shun. And I think he's the main architect of that at this point. He actually has the most vision score per minute, tied first with, I think, Keres, while actually using less wards, while clearing more wards of the enemy. And yeah, he is just he sometimes can be the X factor that CFO actually needs in their games. Kudos for Xiaoxi for actually like remaining relevant despite CFO's slump. People may not agree with me on this one. I definitely will say that I am bad at rating supports, but here you go, CFO Xiaoxi, first all-pro team. On the second one, we will start from the supports again. We will have JT Manso, who in my opinion, his statistics are just really good despite Bruce. This is my excuse. He's doing this despite Bruce. Wacko is... This is a name that you simply cannot ignore. His statistics kind of worse than last split. I think he had worse gold difference at 15 than Shun as far as I remember. And the XP difference is actually first on, so Wacko and Willy still very good laners. PSG Maple, I was talking like it was a very tight race between Minji and Maple, but I am biased towards Minji, so Maple is second. And I also think that the fact that he played 9 J's games also is a factor. I think that him playing with PSG, who have the better jungler and who have the better top lane, I mean, not really, actually. I just didn't see it, you know? Like, I just didn't see as much influence from Maple. I just didn't see as big of a clutch factor from him as in Minji. But the difference is this tiny, with all honesty. The difference is that tiny. I'm going to correct my camera. Actually, that was better. Yep, yeah, whatever. Welcome to the most scuffed podcast for PCS. Anyway, PSG Maple, like, he is second on my all-pro team, but he is still, in my opinion, third best player in the league. And when it comes to the distance between Driver, Minji and Maple and the rest of the pack, it is big. It is very big. And those are the only members which I am not going to be afraid of when it comes to international tournaments. That I think that those are the members that can actually step up and threaten the Western teams. Or even the Chinese teams, but mostly the Western teams. I think it's reasonable to think that these are going to be threats against the Western teams, Maple, Minji and Driver. Lava, enormous glow up from this player. He actually managed to play some good games on the carries and like the side carry that kind of is Nocturne, but he's kind of like the early game champion more than a carry. But yeah, his statistics are really good. He is tied first when it comes to first bloods with one other jungler that I do not remember from the top of my head. And I really did criticize his mechanical abilities, but he has improved. And apart from that, I already thought that he was a very good player in terms of macro, in terms of what he sees in the game. And with his mechanics going bigger, going better, he does deserve this spot in my opinion. Ajay, he was the only consistent top laner who played on a very good level, apart from Driver, who is just playing superb. He was the only one that was being consistent. Taco was a little bit lower when it comes to like his ceiling, and that's why Archie is the second All-Pro, but Taco is going to be the third one. And people may contest this, like they can get solo kills, some may get Hanabi when they look at the statistics. In my opinion, Taco was the most consistent player along all the periods in the game, and him with Tide were basically the game changers for Hell Picks. Tide was somewhat close to going third All-Pro team. Like in the third All-Pro team, it was between Kriskata, Shun, and Tide in my opinion. And you can see Kriskata here, but we'll go over to him in a minute. Taco, with his relatively shallow champion pool still in my opinion, like he is definitely looking the best on the Renekton, but on the Renekton he's looking really good. And I think he does need some appreciation. The other player that needs some appreciation, in my opinion, is 665, and people will definitely rage over 665 over Junjia. And I'm going to explain this pretty briefly. In my opinion, 665 was actually the top 3 jungler in the first half of the split. When their playstyle changed, when people got used to 665's game style, he dropped massively. But I really want to appreciate this first half of the split, when he was getting massive advantages early game. I mean, wasn't 665 just... Maybe he wasn't even the third best. Maybe he was higher. Maybe he was second. I don't think he was better than Kongwei, but like... With his early games, he was looking superb. His team fighting, not so much. But he was the man that actually enabled West Point to accumulate these games versus the worst teams, but he was also kind of the reason why they were losing versus the better teams. I still did wanted to appreciate him because he was actually making stuff happen in the games, and we didn't really see that much on that side from Junjia. Junjia is definitely a monster team fighter still, but I was just so disappointed at him this split. But I'm going to just shoo him away from All-Pro. That's my opinion. 11-16 from a lack of a better mid laner. Straight off. I don't really like him. I am not really a fan of him. It is a better wording because I actually kind of am sympathetic towards him. But he disappointed me really oftenly. And I've grown to not trust his performance. Right now, his stats are not lying. He is definitely one of the best mid laners out there. But there is a big drop when you compare him towards Menji and towards Maple. That's it in my opinion. Like, with Jimin downgrading, with Pretender downgrading, with Mission downgrading, 11-16 is here to entertain you on the third place. Deep Cross Gaming Kriskata, people may be surprised, like, where is Shun? Shun should be here. No. Kriskata was the only consistent part of DCG. His damage percentage is actually monstrous, 31.2% with the 6 GPM, with the 4th DPM, which is kind of like countering my point, but like, he was the only member of DCG that actually consistently was giving the advantages for his team. He's not the best laner, he does not have the best support, like compared to Shun especially, but also the highs of Ice Age are definitely better than Orcas. And overall, I just value this consistency more than Shun, who just didn't impress me. I definitely think that he is able to be considered as third best for some people. I am definitely okay with that. I am also okay with Tide. But Kriskata is my choice, is he's going to be my third All-Pro team. Woody is going to end up on third, and some people will also ask why not higher. But overall, I am just bad at ranking supports and I don't see the value. I really had Woody low before the second episode of the podcast with Smurf. And I am low-key still relying on that opinion. But I also think that he was not going for those game-losing plays that Kaiwing and Carries were going for. So he is still going to remain on the third slot. And that's going to be it for the All-Pro teams. Now for the most improved player, congratulations to West Point Esports. Relia, I think that ever since he came to Taiwan, ever since he got his visa, he has been a massive point in West Point Esports' success. I definitely think that he had way too little time with the team to actually get used to the carry roles with him and Nulvi. But in my opinion, he did impress me the most. His healing was definitely the highest. His improvement was the highest compared to his ceiling. If we only touch his ceiling. And I would like to give a word to a Southeast Asian player. Let him have it. He has been enjoying 200 up to 200 pin games. Let's not be malicious with the narrative, but he has been playing with very jumpy ping in the Philippines. We saw that he had potential, and now he's actually turning to be a really good player, in my opinion. And I hope that he manages to stay more in Taiwan for the next split. I hope that this is the Philippine player that West Point Esports does invest into, and I hope that he actually wants to stay in esports for a longer time. I want to see this player succeed. I definitely want to see this player succeed. When it comes to the MVP, let me just talk about the most improved player for a little bit. The players in contention were definitely Taco, definitely Lauva, and also 665. 665 fell off latter half of the split. Lauva didn't have that good first half of the split, and Taco didn't have the ceiling. If we counted consistency, Taco is definitely your pick for the most improved player. Apart from that, congratulations to Relia, in my opinion. My predictions for the PCS playoffs. Wait, I don't have the MVP here. Did I mess up? Did I mess up? No. Okay. My predictions for the PCS playoffs are here, but we are going to go for the regular season MVP for a brief moment. For J-Team Driver, congratulations to him. Dominated the position in the split. Straight off. I think that he was an immense player. He was just the best player. I mean, that's just my opinion. Maple is definitely in contention here. Minji is definitely in contention here. Those are the three players, in my opinion, from which you can pick towards. Kongyue, maybe. I can kind of see Kongyue. I can kind of see Betty. But I don't think that they were consistent enough to be considered. Driver, though, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, undisputed. Congratulations to him. And here we go for predictions for PCS playoffs, in my opinion, before we go to the power rankings, which are kind of going to differ from the All-Pro teams, by the way. But yeah, my predictions for PCS playoffs. 3-1, I expect the Oceanic teams to get to be more competitive this time. I do not expect them to win a series though, and I definitely think that the first series for CFO will be a rocky start, but I think that they will it will be the jumpstart that they need in terms of mental, and they will ultimately lose to J-Team, who I think will lose to BYG the first series and will win the second series, as they will get better preparation. And yeah, I think that BYG is going to pop off versus J-Team. They are going to pop off versus Team Bliss. And I actually low-key predict 3-0 for PSG. And for them to actually miss out on the Worlds for the first time. Frank, I expect them to drop out pretty early because I expect J-Team to drop out early into the lower bracket. I don't think they win versus BYG either, but I am happy to be contested on this. And yeah, J-Team to win the split, hopefully. I kind of do not want this to be another boring PSG win. I don't really want their boring playstyle to win again, as they did many times. But yeah, that's it from my predictions. We will transition briefly over to my power rankings. And for that, I will jump here. Yeah. So, this is my power rankings. You will see that, for example, Relia here is higher, because right now I think he is better than Taco. You see Junjia over Lauva and 665. I think over 665 that is pretty explanatory. I did mention that he just went worse when Relia came in. He just didn't get enough resources. Lauva at A+ though is definitely deserved from him. Junjie, I think, is still the better player, but not in this play style. Gemini is still going to be a rest, downgrading massively, because I think that he didn't step up at all. Jimin going down somewhat largely as well. Hanabi going 8th, but still on the A tier, because I think that PCS top laners are still really good, just not as dominantly good. And yeah, I mean, Kriskata on the 3rd. What a time to see Kriskata over Shadowshin. A little bit, just a little bit. I don't think that Shun definitely benefits much from Xiaoxi at this point. And Keres and Kaiwing are going to be 4th and 5th. They are still going to be A+, because I do respect their potential, but their decision making is kind of trash at times. Otherwise, I see it at B8, he is very inconsistent, especially on the Huracan. Nuli and Adiox are actually somewhat high compared to the rest of mid laners, but that is, as I said, from them downgrading. Pretender over 11-16 here is pure bias. Do not watch this. This is pure bias. I am a fanboy of Pretender. Yeah, and I still don't think that overall all of the teams are able to be reliably competitive against the Western teams. Especially against the higher seed NA and higher seed EU teams. Against the lower seeds, they still can compete fairly well, I think. But overall, I do not trust them against the G2s, against Excel in their playoff form, against Golden Guardians in their top form, against NRG in their top form. I do not trust them. That is going to be it for me. I was Meander, and this was the rapidly changing color palette of my camera over the course of this episode, as the sun sets for today and the episode is going to a close. We will see you on the playoffs. Goodbye.